Hello guys, how are you? Welcome to another shop video. Today's episode is going to be about the skip plate. If you guys watched the to-do list, you guys know that it was kind of higher up there for me as far as priorities go. And the reason why is because of the radiator for the most part. There's another reason that I'll mention in a minute. But the radiator in this truck is from a Cummins because it has a Cummins in it, and it is very long and it's very wide, and it sits between the frame rails, and it actually pokes out from the bottom of the frame rails about 4 inches. So it's kind of hanging out there in the breeze, unprotected. It's already taken a few little shots here and there. So it is a high priority to get the skip plate built to protect that rad. That's the main reason. But the second reason is on the 1500 of this vintage, the cross member underneath the engine is a really big flat piece of frame that can easily get hung up on, let's say, like rocks or logs or whatever. So that's the second part. I would like to have the skip plate not only protect the rad, but give me basically some sort of a ramp, you know, to get over obstacles, to winch over obstacles, etc. I think the way I'm going to do this is build a frame first, and then the skip plate will bolt to that frame. So I've been lying under the truck here for a little while, trying to figure out how I'm going to build this exactly. I just did a quick little diagram of my idea here. So as you can see, I kind of drew an outline here. I think this is going to be essentially a 1/4 inch plate. It's going to be bolted to the frame. It's going to be laser cut to a specific shape here, and then it's going to have 2 holes on each side, 1/2 inch holes for bolts. You can imagine that plate being bolted there and then this welded to it. Kind of how it's going to look with the skip plate on underneath here. This whole frame can be taken off the vehicle, maybe rebuilt, straightened, or whatever needs to be done, repainted, repowder coated down the road if it's not too far gone. Alright guys, so I've spent what seemed like a couple hours underneath the truck just measuring stuff, trying to get some sort of an idea of how I'm going to build this whole frame, and more importantly, how I'm going to attach it to the truck and without losing any ground clearance, because it's a bit of a challenge. There is a big chunk of frame there, as you've seen, but attaching it is not going to be easy, but I think I got the solution. So I'm going to take you guys over here to my little board, and you guys will get to see my terrible drawing skills, and I'll try to kind of make it more visual, I guess, to see what I've come up with. So I'm going to make a bracket. It's going to come down here like that off of a 1/2 inch bolt. Then I'm going to have the square tubing come down like that. And there's going to be a plate like this over here. That's going to be a 1/4 inch. That's going to be bolted to the frame like that. And then the skip plate over top, and I might add another structural support here or here going across the truck from left to right. And then the skip plate will go over top and kind of match up with this angle here. So that's how I'm going to build it, so that I'm not losing any ground clearance here whatsoever. And on the back side, same kind of idea. I'm going to have a 1/4 inch plate with another little plate with nuts bolted to it. That's going to be probably tack welded in place. And then square tubing coming off this guy, and then going at a slight angle like this at some point, maybe here somewhere past the diff, welded there and welded there. So if I ever need to take it off, I can take this whole thing and unbolt it for any kind of servicing. And of course the skip plate's going to be underneath that. So that's kind of what I've come up with. Now, of course, this is just a side view, but there's lots of different angles at play here. The biggest part is there's an opening right here in this frame, and this is where the lower control arm goes in. So the plates I'm going to make are going to be just square like this, and I'm going to have a 1/2 inch nut spot welded to them. I'm going to insert that in behind through that hole, and then drill a couple of holes in this frame and spot weld them into place. That's the idea right now. I drew a bunch of stuff out on paper here. Basically essentially the same thing. This is all my little notes that I make, how many brackets I need to make and all that kind of stuff, and some dimensions. This is the one I have for the kind of the back side where the diff is, which is exactly what I just drew for you guys there. And now it's time to take all this and convert it into some CAD files. Well guys, it's been a few days and we finally got the stuff back from the laser shop. Alright, well let's go to the truck and start putting some things on there and maybe tacking some things in place. Well, it's kind of the moment of truth here. I'm going to try to slide these plates in behind here. I got my spot weld holes drilled now too, so these are just like 1/4 inch. Then I'm going to use to spot weld these plates on the other side of the frame in place with the nuts welded to them. Got to go through the hole here that's in the frame by the air. Oh, I think I got one. All right, that's one. Let's see if she lines up. Now, one thing to note here is this whole frame is not exactly flat. There's like a bulge in the middle, and then it kind of goes down. It's a stamped piece, so it's not as flat as one person might think by looking at it through the camera. But I designed the plate that goes over top in a specific way. It's thinner in the middle so that it can flex easier once everything's bolted in place. All right, well that's one, and now all I got to do is just spot weld through there. So I just want to show you guys what I got going on here. There's this angle, there's this angle, there is that angle. There's a lot going on. But then there's about 3 or 4 really crazy angles there, and it's taken me a few times trimming this to be able to even get it where I'm kind of happy with the fitment. And right about here I decided to stop what I was doing and go about this in a completely different way. With all these angles going on, I knew that making both sides exactly the same would be almost impossible. So I decided just to design the skip plates first and have them cut and bent to what I needed them to be. And then I was going to use the skip plates as templates to build the frames off of. And that way I knew the frames would be nice and square, the angles would be the same, and the skip plates would fit the frames perfectly. So once I had the front plate designed, I got going on the rear part of the frame on the truck so that I could design the skip plate that would cover the diff in the same way. I'm just using a piece of welding rod here to get my angle and my length of the next skip plate. So I'm kind of looking to see how it's all going to tuck in here. I've got a pretty good idea here with the welding rod, like what my fit's going to be like, but most importantly this angle. I have to have an angle on this one, so I have to have it bent once it's cut, just enough to clear the diff. So I'm going to use this welding rod as a guide just to see how much clearance I'm going to have and that kind of stuff. There's two very critical pieces of information this welding rod provided me. One was obviously the angle that the plate had to be bent to, which I'm measuring here. And then when I was done with that, I ended up straightening the piece of welding rod, and that gave me the length that the skip plate had to be. After finishing the design on the plates and sending the files off to the laser shop, I had to get some of the frame pieces ready so that I could start assembling everything when the skip plates showed up. And then just like that, voila! They were here. It's pretty cool to see something you draw up on computer actually become reality. So now that they were here, it was time to try to test fit them, make sure that they were right, and start building the frames. There you go. That's basically what the front frame is going to look like. Everything's just kind of tacked together right now, and then I'll do the final weld with the TIG welder. But I'm going to bolt it to the chassis now and see how it looks. Still got to do the front mounts here off the bumper. Alright guys, so here's the frame. Basically how it is, bolted to the frame for the truck. And then on my mounting points for the skip plate, there's going to be 10 of them. One last mount I have to figure out is this one on the front here. As you can tell, I'm a little bit off. There's quite a few angles here to deal with, so what I might do is give it a bend. So oxyacetylene would come in really handy right now, but that's one thing I don't have in the shop, and I've been meaning to get a torch set for years. It just hasn't happened, but in situations like this, it would be awesome just to bend these brackets. But I think I'm going to be able to just hold it in the press here and then put a snipe and a crescent wrench on it, a big crescent wrench, and be able to just twist them. Well, it's much better for sure, but I think it needs to still be bent. Basically the bracket needs to have a bend in it. I think it's starting to line up with the square tubing pretty nicely angle wise, but it just has to be tucked in. Alright, I know it kind of looked like a complete mess on the press there when I was bending it, but you can't really deny the fit here now. I mean, it is pretty much perfect. So had to be a twist put in it and a bend at the same time, but I mean now it fits perfect for welding. Now I just got to do the other side the same way. Having the frame spot welded good enough that I could actually bolt the skip plate to it. I noticed there's a couple places where I had to trim with the plasma cutter because the skip plate is actually hitting my winch mount. And after getting that done, then I would be able to take the frame off and do the final welding on it. Time to do some TIG welding. Plug it in first, I guess. Okay, the frame is basically done. Everything's welded. And I chamfered all the corners. I just find that that helps with powder coating. I did the same thing on the skip plate, but that's basically the final version here, and it's nice and solid. So now I'm just going to bolt the skip plate on, and then that can stay there until this is ready to come off for powder coating. Now I've had this on and off about 50 times now, but that's how it goes. Bolt started. Once I got a couple in, then it's not so bad. Kind of holds it there for me, but the first couple, it's a bit tough. Holding it with my knee. Try not to get smacked in the face. And there you guys go. So that's the front one basically. Hey everybody, it's another day in the shop. And I'm working on the diff skip plate now. The very front one's pretty much done, and this one's about halfway done. Let me show you how much I've done so far. So we built these little frame rails here. This is going to be the back, that's the front. I'm wondering if I should add a third piece of square tubing in the middle just for more like impact resistance. The pumpkin of the diff sits right about here, and so then there would be one on either side of it. Maybe, maybe not. We'll see what it looks like. I think it's going to be pretty tough as it is, but technically this skip plate is going to be the lowest part. This bend here is going to be what's going to be the lowest part of the whole skip blade system. So if anything hits, it's going to be there. So I'm almost thinking a third piece right here for what it's worth. But for now, I'm going to hold this up there best I can, maybe use a jack to hold it in place for me, and then spot weld these onto the truck, and then worry about the middle piece after that. Looks like everything lines up pretty nice. With the diff frame finally done, it was time to start working on the third and final frame that would cover the oil pans from the engine and the transmission. Here I'm tack welding the first piece to the existing diff frame, and then I'm going to take it over to the drill press and drill both pieces at the same time so the holes are nice and lined up and square. The reason that's important is you'll see later I plan to sleeve the holes so that when you tighten the bolts and bolt both frames together, you can't crush the square tubing. Alright guys, so I got the holes drilled on the old mill and nice and square as you've seen. So now it's time to just grind those tacks off, separate the tubes, and then I'm going to use this stainless steel tubing, just scrap stuff I've had laying around, as my spacers. There's a couple benefits to it. Number one, it saves me the time of making something on the lathe. So unfortunately this video is not going to have any lathe action on it. I know some of you guys like that, but it saves me the time of making the spacers on the lathe, and then being that they're stainless, the bolt won't rust to the spacer. The bolt will rust, but it won't rust together to this spacer, so I should be able to always get it apart even after years and years of the skip blades being on there. Anyways, I'm going to separate these guys out, cut the tubes to the right length, and start welding them in. Just wanted to show you guys what I'm doing. So basically all I do is stick that piece of stainless steel tubing through, let it stick out about 1/4 of an inch, melt it down, clean it up with the die grinder like this, and then I cut off this side and do the same thing on both sides, and then you know you got tubing basically inside. Everything's like welded and sleeved now, so I tack welded the nuts on the back side. So all the guys got to do now is just bolt everything together, put this back on the truck, and then start building off of this and do the very rear skid plate. Bring you guys under here and show you kind of what I'm up against. Have to plasma trim this down a little bit so that it fits the frame, because I want it to be smooth. I don't want anything to stick out.
And I've been taking these rails in and out and trimming them so that they fit in here and my holes line up for my washers. So now I got this side pretty much ready. I'm gonna bolt it down to the skip plate, tack weld the frame here best I can, and then take this bracket and make it fit. This will be the mounting point at the back, this at the front. Both skip plates, everything will be nice and smooth here. There's not going to be any sharp edges sticking out or anything except for the washers. That's the only thing that's going to stick out. Tiny bit more, she's getting there. Anyways, that's one side. I'm going to do the same on the other now. It's very hard to do. I'm welding blind here. The camera has fallen down multiple times, hit me in the face a couple of times, so that's always fun. But let me take the camera out and I'll show you guys. So I'm working around this torsion bar. There's the oil pan for the trans, there's the frame, there's like all kinds of stuff, so it's a little tough to film and work at the same time, but I got one side on, so I can get the other side on, and then I can take the skip plate off and then weld this. Alright guys, I think I'm done with the skip plates. The frames are done. The skip plates can be mounted on. Of course, all that stuff's gonna have to go to powder coat, but I'm gonna install everything just to see how it looks like. I'll give you guys a quick look here on the frames. Starting from the front here. This is kind of what it's looking like. And then the middle one that protects the diff. There's the frame for that. And then the one that protects the transmission and drive shaft basically. So all that's left to do now is just bolt the skip plates on it. See what she looks like. Alright guys, that takes care of the skip plates. I'm not gonna lie to you, that was a lot of work, but I think it came out pretty nice in the end, and I think they're gonna be tough enough to handle what we can throw at it anyways. And if we bend them up or we destroy them somehow, like I said, we got it designed on CAD, so we can always just get another plate cut and bolt it on. All that's left now is to send them out to powder coat. I'm going to take the skip plates off, take the frames off, and everything's going to go get powder coated. But I'm going to wait until this bumper project is done, and that's what's coming up next. I got these driving lights, the high beam, low beam, yellow and white, and we're going to put 2 per side into the bumper. So I'll be cutting some holes, doing some welding with some little pockets that I gotta make out of some aluminum pipe to house these, and then everything together is gonna go to the powder coaters.